For the first time this year, we might get a champion crowned on Sunday at the Qatar Grand Prix. Welcome to the Everything F1 podcast with Sean and Coops. Joining us again this evening to preview Qatar is Saki. Good evening.
How are we, folks?
We are, of course, though, here to preview the Qatar Grand Prix, which happens this weekend. It is a sprint weekend. Let's have a quick look at the track first. It is the Lusail International Circuit, and I was actually at it last year. So if you're watching us on YouTube, there's me smiling at the poster last year, the big sign at the entrance for the Qatar Grand Prix. So the track is a 5.4 kilometer track. There are a lot of turns, 57 lap race, and it's been on the calendar now for a couple of years, but it is a bike track. Very much a bike track, but we've had some interesting races here over the past couple of years since it debuted a few years back. And I suppose the big one, Saki, let's go back a couple of years because the big one was it 2023 when everybody was nearly throwing up in their helmets and we had Logan Sargent literally pulling himself out of the race before he passed out, and Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon saying they did, or Lance Stroll saying he did pass out. Esteban Ocon said he actually threw up in his helmet. It's a bit
Yeah.
of a mad one over the past couple of years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And it's always thrown up some decent racing, given it was a bike track. Nobody's really been too enamored by it from when it first was announced it was coming to be on the calendar. But I don't know, like, even if you look back at last year, three safety cars, you know what I mean? Like, you look for a little bit of danger, and it's definitely thrown that up when it comes to tires, which I will 100% be getting into at some point as well later.
Mm.
But it's wild, I suppose, as well. Some of these desert tracks as well just throw extreme conditions for the drivers, and intense tailwinds as well seem to be catching people off in qualies. That tends to throw a little bit of mismatch around the final placing. So no, it does. It's a bit of a wild track, and I do like the weekend of racing it brings up.
So do I. It's a good one to have a sprint at, I think. I think if it was just three practice sessions qualifying in a race, it would be quite dull. I think it is a good one to have a sprint. So it's good that we get a sprint again this weekend because it just gives a little bit more to work on. And it's a demanding track, so the less practice, the better. As we've seen, anytime there's a sprint or anytime there's rain wash, Vegas, the setups get screwed when you don't get a lot of meaningful running. Coops, you like me enjoy the F1 games and giving you to go. Have you tried this one on the game?
I have not, no. It
It's a
looks
good
fun.
one. It certainly is a good one. It's definitely a challenge. And but you can see why all the drivers enjoy it because it's like Sector 1 of Japan times five.
Yeah,
Just
well
never
then I'm
stop
not.
turning.
Well, I'm never going to enjoy it because could I ever get that sector right in the game? No, 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 no. And probably why I've kind of retired from the game. I might get F125 because you're getting 26 as a DLC, so it's probably going to be a bit cheaper. Maybe fire that around. And I don't only play the game as with the controller, so that's probably another reason why I'm awful at it. But yeah, I can't really say too much more than what's already been said. Good track, even though it's a bike track. It's just slightly different than what we're used to, with
Hmm.
the sweeping kind of corners, changes of directions. Uh, there's a couple of tracks. Silverstone has a similar sort of setup for one section. Japan has a bit like it. There's a couple of bits in other tracks that I'm trying to put my finger on,
It's
but
it's got
they
a couple
would.
of bits of some of the best tracks in the world. I mean, it's got the Suzuka style S's in the middle sector, turns kind of 7 to 10, you're left, right, left, sweeping over the curbs. The 12, 13, 14 triple right-hander is like the turn 8 in Istanbul Park in reverse. It's almost completely flat out for a triple apex corner. It's very good. And you've got the Lesmos from Monza in there as well. Two 90-degree right-handers, turns 4 and 5. Makes for a good track. It's certainly a driver challenge, and it's one of those tracks. It's a short enough lap. I mean, the pole position last year for George Russell was 120.5. It's not a particularly long track in terms of time, even though it is 5.4 kilometers long, so it's not short by any means. But the lap time is very quick. It's a very, very high speed track. Setup's going to be an interesting one this weekend because obviously it is a rapid track, lots of high corners, which means it is high downforce. There's only really one straight. There's only one DRS zone, I think, down the main straight, and It's the main opportunity for overtaking is into turn one. But what it means is there's going to be high downforce. And we touched on this a little bit, Saki, last week when we were reviewing, well, this week, because quick turnaround, when we were reviewing Vegas, how the setup was interesting and, the rain, how did McLaren set it up properly, the plank wear, all that sort of stuff. Everyone was trying to run low. They didn't really know what they were doing. They hadn't tested the tires. This weekend is going to be similar in terms of a lack of running because sprint weekend, no practice. They'll have to use the sprint race as a bit of a practice. But as we touched on last week, this is a bit of a different animal. I don't think anybody's going to even risk running low, not least because there's been another disqualification from it. But you absolutely clout the curbs on this track. You have to for the quickest track. You almost cut half the corners over the curbs on this track.
Yeah, but also that brings its own risk in terms of plank wear too. So, you know what I mean? I
That's
don't know if
true.
it's necessarily going to be cut and dry that everybody's going to be on stilts. Um, Especially with that kind of quick turn. Look, I think they will. We look back to China. Ferrari go and do fantastic in the sprint. So look, they might gamble a bit on the sprint, see how it comes
Mm.
out because there's less chance of the full degradation on that on the boards. You know what I mean? That could lead to a further disqualification, but it might give them good insight in terms of how high they potentially need to go for the race. So it will be interesting if they do go high, how their performance is, but I'm expecting them to have a better sprint than I am expecting them to have a race.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. And obviously, in terms of strategy and setup, a big consideration this weekend is that they are once again mandating two stops this weekend. I don't think I agree with this because having been to Qatar at this time of the year, I didn't mind it. In fact, it was even worse, really, wasn't it, when it was so hot? Because that's why they all the pre. So in 2023, it was earlier in the year. It was in October, I think, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was much, much earlier in the year, and it was still very much hot as hell, even as a night race, which it is. This time last year, at the start of December, end of November, start of December, by the time the night hit, it was cold in Lusail in Doha. It was cold, and they weren't really burning the tires up, so to speak.
No, track temperatures around 24 degrees ish is kind of what's being estimated for the
Yeah,
weekend.
which is
So, I
cold by
mean,
Formula One standards. I mean, like Silverstone gets up to 50 sometimes.
yeah, well, I mean that's peaking.
The middle of
It
summer.
wasn't
Yeah.
50 this year, I can tell you.
No, it wasn't.
But yeah, no, the likes of Miami and other tracks like that, it does get that hot. Even in Texas as well, it can get
Mm.
pretty toasty. So no, you won't be boiling any or frying any eggs on the tarmac this weekend. But yeah, 24, 25. So yeah, it'll be interesting. And that kind of I really don't like, and it's worse than two stops. It's 25 max stint
Laps.
laps
Yeah.
on the tires, which I think is worse than saying, look, you just have to pit twice. If it was pit twice, I think there's still a little bit of room there for some strategy to play in.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're limiting the cars to only go 25, I think they're
It
completely
means they're all
neutralizing the race.
shy of a crash or a safety car, which statistically is likely. There was three last year.
Mhm.
But shy of that, they're all going to push flat F 25 laps, push pit on lap 25, push for another 25 laps, and then pit on lap 50. Coops, what do you
DRS
add? Which,
trains everywhere.
and again, sorry, it's a 57 lap race, so
Yeah.
they can't one stop. But a two stop might leave them with like a 7 lap stint at the end, which is weird. Coops, we've talked about this a couple of times. There's been a load of talk about how do they make strategy and pit stops a little bit more interesting because this isn't the first time that they tried to implement mandatory two stops. They didn't try it. They did mandate two pit stops in Monaco to try and make it interesting. It wasn't at all. In fact, it was a more boring Monaco race than we've had in a long time. Um, and it's because they're mandating just stop twice. So if you start in the hards, put on the mediums, put the hards back on. It's really boring. One that's been batted around a lot by everyone who talks about Formula One is if they're going to do that, at least make them run all the tire compounds. Because then you have a bit of peril, a bit of strategy. It's a bit like in Formula E or like Rallycross, where you have to take your Joker lap which slows you down. But if you don't take it, you lose much more time than if you just bloody took it. And it's a strategy piece. So if you make them have to run the soft tires in absolutely every single race, there's some tracks where that'll only go 3 laps. So that's your joker period is put them on for 3 laps, blitz 3 laps, and then come in and change them again. What do you think of the mandating just two 25, a maximum 25 lap stint? It's a weird one.
Well, it's not done for any reason other than Pirelli have issues with the tires. So it's a technical issue. Pirelli have looked at something and went, we're not happy. So every single tire has to do a maximum of 25 laps, and that's cumulative. So if you've ran it for 5 laps in practice, you can only run
Oh,
it
we
for
didn't
20
realize that.
laps.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it
So
is. It's cumulative. Yeah.
so so the problem you have with this is if everyone bolted on brand new tyres, everyone's coming into the pits in lap 25 or lap 24. So it's half and half. And then you're doing another 25, 24, and then you're basically flinging on the sauce for 7 laps, and it's a 7 lap sprint race at the end.
Mm.
Literally, that's it. The only difference in strategy is, do you do medium first, or do you do hard first, or do you even just do the sauce first and do your first 7 laps and then do the other? That's it. There's no real, or you got to go long and try and undercut. So in that sense, it's not great. The only other part that could put a spanner in the works is if a team uses too many tires during the weekend, and then they've got to maybe do a third stop because they've only got 2020 and then they have to go for like 14 or whatever.
There's an interesting element on that because usually if you see someone start on the two extremes of the tires, on the hards or on the softs, they're starting that to get a bit of an advantage, expecting a safety car on lap one effectively, and they can shed themselves of those tires and go the right. Effectively, what Kimi Antonelli did in Vegas, he put it on lap two, got rid of the mediums, put the hards on, and didn't stop for the rest of the race. They can't do that now because
Nope.
even if they put on the soft, thinking, "Oh, we'll do our 7 lap stint here," if there's a safety car on lap three, you're not going to not take that opportunity to get rid of those softs. But you're going to have to stop 3 times because you could put hards on twice. It's still only 50 laps. You've got 4 to go. And so it's weird. Okay, so maybe there is a bit of strategy that'll come in there if safety cars come into it. But equally, you might just have everyone starts on the mediums. They go forever. They don't pit under the safety car. They pit on lap 25 and they pit on lap 50. Boring.
And look, I get it that there's a mandate from Pirelli who are saying, look, we don't like the integrity of the tires after 25 laps. To me, that should just be a note to the teams and let the teams decide if they're going to take the risk or be safe and come in within the 25 lap limit where they're told, hey, this tire is probably going to die on lap 26. And when I say die on, it's going to explode into a million pieces. Like I think we've seen in the first year where tires were just exploding left, right, and center. Like, look, I get it. There is a driver safety aspect to this, and I can kind of appreciate that element of it. However, I kind of need to put that back on towards the teams. So Pirelli come in and they say, look, we don't appreciate the integrity here after the 25 laps piece. That then I think falls on the shoulders of the teams and the drivers in terms of what they want to do.
I think so too. And there's also, let's not forget, when they've mandated this in the past, it didn't slow anybody down. They all ended up getting sick because there was no concern on tire wear ever because they knew exactly when they were going to pit because they had to pit. So they all pushed at almost qualifying pace for the whole race, which was interesting to look at if you knew that that's what was happening and when the TV direction showed it properly, but was also a boring as hell spectacle because 20 Formula One cars pushing in a line 100% flat out is not interesting. Because if they're all going at the same bloody speed, like with the best one in the world, yeah, okay, we can say, the Sauber and the Alpine are rubbish bins, but they're still only about a second and a half slower than the quickest car in terms of qualifying pace, pure pace on their own. They're still if you put someone who drove in Formula One 15 years ago into this year's Alpine, they'll think that is the single greatest thing I have ever set foot in.
But like there's a driver safety aspect of it there as well. Do you know what I mean? You're kind of saying, right, this tire, yeah, do what you want with it for 25 laps, but after that, then throw the boots off. Like,
but the other aspect of it is because they're pushing 25 laps flat out, they are putting more strain into those tires. If they didn't mandate that, no one's pushing flat out. The tires will probably do 40 laps. So it's a complete double-edged sword.
Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong. I want tires that fall apart, that gives a bit of, but like I don't mean, I want them to be a little bit unreliable. That you stick on the pair of hards, and then actually after 15 laps, for whatever reason, like the cars are becoming too good at what they do. that they're just so light on the tires that you can see the likes of Kimi Antonelli do 50 odd laps in Vegas, not a bother, one of the longest tracks of the year, whereas I want an unreliable compound that, yes, this should on a good day go 30 laps, but you could be unlucky and you're going to have no rubber left after 15, 20 laps. I want that back. Like, maybe bring back Bridgestone.
Oh, we need a tire war for sure. We absolutely need a tire war. Let's chat then about last year's race, because it was an interesting one in a lot of ways. It was a sprint race, of course, last year as well. And last year in qualifying for the sprint, Lando Norris qualified on sprint pole from George Russell and Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen was then in sixth. But then Oscar won the sprint after Lando gave up the win. So Lando was basically told, keep Oscar in your DRS there to keep George behind. And literally on the last corner, and I remember him coming because I was sat at the final turn at the grandstand there. Lando comes by and you can hear he's almost turned his engine off. You think, shit, he's breaking down at the last corner. He wasn't. He was just letting Oscar past to return the favor because Oscar let him through in Sao Paulo. Strange one. Anyway, the race was a little bit more interesting because Max Verstappen turned up, qualified on pole, and won the race. But Lando Norris was given a stop-go penalty, if I'm not wrong. Was it a full stop-go penalty?
So to drive
A
through
10 seconds, 10-second stop and go penalty for ignoring yellow flags. So there's a fair bit to unpick there. Cool. So I'll start with you on the sprint. One, it's strongly unlikely that Lando Norris is going to cough up a sprint win to Oscar Piastri this time around.
Absolutely not.
No. But what do you think are we likely to see in the sprint this weekend? Because it is only 19 laps, so the tire mandate doesn't come into it anyway. There'll be no stops. Are we expecting 19 laps flat out, or is someone going to throw a bit of caution to the wind and try something different?
Oh, I think it'll be 19 laps of just going for it. What am I expecting at the front? I don't know if Lando's going to be front. I think Max will probably be second, or at least second. You just can't count him out. Anytime I predicted he's not going to do it, he ends up winning the race. But then, I mean, that's just form for my predictions, to be honest. So yeah, it's going to be. I think it'll be interesting. I think maybe Antonelli will have a good go at it. As you say, it's a good track for sprint, and it'll give us a pretty decent idea of how each of the stints in the Grand Prix are going to go on Sunday. Probably more so than any other one with the mandate. The mandate is done purely on safety because they noticed over the last 2 years that even with drivers trying to manage degradation of the tyres, it was starting to break down the construction of the tyre. So basically turning them into bits of glass. And I mean, it doesn't help that last year there was a car wing mirror sitting in the track. And
Yeah, Alex Albon's. Yeah,
everybody's
shattered their floor.
Didn't somebody yeet it then eventually to bring out the safety car?
Bottas
did.
Yeah.
Bottas hit it, and then Sainz and Hamilton both ended up with tyre failures, like on the same lap, and then they ended up having to go through the pit straight to get it clean. So yeah, that's the reason why that is. The sprint will be a sprint. I actually think one of my kind of early predictions is I think someone's going to come a cropper that's involved in the championship fight in the sprint. I think there'll be something that will happen.
Bit of drama in the sprint.
Yeah, that will cause a bit of that will either pretty much
which we've seen in the last, which has happened in exactly the last two sprints.
Yeah.
Obviously, Oscar Piastri yeeted himself into the wall in Brazil, and Oscar Piastri yeeted himself into Lando Norris into Nico Hulkenberg, and then into Lando Norris in Texas. So we're saying it's going to be
first turn, and it's not necessarily quite a familiar one. Like
it's a very quick one.
Yeah,
it's a very quick one. So it's not necessarily a heavy braking zone, and we've seen this a couple of times. I saw Lewis Hamilton collide into George Russell by getting the braking zone wrong. Was that in 2023 or 2021? Collided into his own teammate by getting the speed into that corner wrong.
Yeah, it's a track that I was looking at the highlights quickly when we're talking about it. It's a track that allows drivers to drive almost full tilt next to each other, and that's always going to be an issue, especially fast starting. Actually, the start of the Grand Prix had 3 or 4 cars going out because there was like a sandwich because it's a wide track as well. That's the thing. It's quite a wide kind of modern track, so cars will go alongside. They will think they've got space. I just think somebody's going to trip up over somebody, and I think it's going to be everyone within everything F1 and you guys will out with the calculators and trying to like, what does that mean? Oh, wait, hold on, wait, oh, I think that I think and right, I'm going to put it out there now. I think something will happen at the sprint that which will almost more or less guarantee the title to Norris.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that it'll be interesting when we get to our predictions then at the end because one of the things I'm going to ask you in your predictions is Lando this weekend or does it go on to Abu Dhabi? I won't ask you to say who it go if it goes to Abu Dhabi, who it'll go to, but that'll be one of the predictions. So have a think about that, Coops. It looks like you've already made your decision on that. But we'll come to that a little bit later. Sock there on the race last year. Again, there was drama. There wasn't necessarily on track overtakes so much, but plenty happened. Obviously, Lando got the 10-second stop go, which I've watched it back. He didn't slow down during yellow flags. I think,
It was
the
tight. It was very
it was
tight.
tight. It was a location of the board kind of thing. I think a 10-second stop go for yellow. It wasn't even double yellow. Double yellow is a different matter entirely.
Mm.
But a 10-second stop go for a yellow flag infringement that was close is quite harsh. 5-second penalty, drive-through penalty, even a 10-second penalty fine. But a 10-second stop go is, with the exception of a full disqualification, a black flag, is about the worst penalty you could be given. And I don't think he did all that much wrong, really.
No, well, look, I get it as in, look, there's driver standards that they all signed up to, and safety under yellow, double yellows, like that is a big one. Again, it kind
But
of comes back to,
We saw Liam Lawson flat out ignore a
oh
double
yeah,
yellow in
well,
Brazil 3 weeks ago and got no penalty for it at all.
yeah, I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like we see the discretion piece that I spoke about as well. Like it just depending on where they are in the world,
Mm,
discretion seems to be used sometimes and not in others. That look, that's where we're saying like, look, I get the driver's standards, and they want them to be harsh so that people aren't making gains unfairly, and
mm,
secondly, they aren't putting other drivers at risk because typically when there is yellows and double yellows, there's potentially somebody on the track or in a very dangerous position.
mm,
We saw something like that in Australia a couple of years back when George ended up flipping. You know what I mean? Like there
mm.
can be some scary moments. So like I get it that they all sign up to the standards and they want the harsh penalties for stuff like that. But yeah, it did seem in the context of what had happened, how it had happened, the fact that the stewards get an opportunity to see where everything was. I suppose the only thing that goes against them is there are lights on the steering wheel
The
as well.
Syria, yeah.
Oh, look,
And I
and
think I think that's what they did him on basically. I still think it
I
was a bit hard.
think
10-second stop go for a yellow flag, not double yellows or a red flag, I
mm,
think was very harsh.
it
But to your
was.
point, Coops, I think we might see something like I'm not suggesting Lando's going to go like cut a corner or ignore flags again. But there's certainly going to be something at play this weekend, and talk like 3 safety cars. Last year we saw Guan Yu Zhou get his first points of the season, Sauber's only points of the
It
season. I can tell you that got
finished
the
eighth.
biggest share of anyone in the crowd. As soon as Lando got that drive-through penalty, everybody was like, "Oh, feck it, we're Sauber fans now." It was pretty good fun. The cheer was incredible for him. Everyone was paying really close attention to the timing towers. And yeah, like I said, we had that wing mirror from Alex Albon. Sergio Perez spun off right in front of the Grand Slam, which was funny. And there's lots going on. So there's again, it's not necessarily the track for amazing on-track overtakes. It's not Brazil, but
No,
something will
there's
happen this
action.
weekend.
There is action, and then I suppose if you look at the wider weekend as well, like not to add fuel to Coop's mad theories, but Max last year, like we always say, he starts off these weekends like a bat out of hell. Whereas last year, actually, I think in Qatar he was not really at it in the sprint, but then obviously in the main
No,
race
he
they changed a
qualified
couple of things.
fifth and finished eighth in the sprint, actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
he had
he
a
was
bad
going
sprint.
backwards. Yeah, he had a bad sprint last year, and he himself kind of called it out, saying, "Look, I think
He was
one of the
overtaken by
quotes
Nico
was,
Hulkenberg on the last lap.
yeah, one of the quotes was he was fighting the midfield teams, you know what I mean, and he goes from that to winning races. It just seems like a wild weekend. Even he called it out himself. So look, it has that potential that there can be big ebbs and flows in the weekend of it as well, in terms of what happens in the sprint doesn't necessarily kind of follow through, where you kind of see that in the other tracks, that kind of sprint gives you a little indication as to what's ahead of you later on. So it does. Those three, who was it, Ocon and Franco, that yeeted themselves out of it, with
Yes, I
Hulkenberg
believe so.
just about
With Hulk.
scraping through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was lap one. Again, I think it was just after
Lap one, turn one. Yeah. Yeah. Turn one, too. Yeah.
So there's definitely jeopardy there. So I can see that happening.
Well,
I'm
with that in
still
mind,
disappointed with the 25 lap limit, though.
yes. With that in mind, though, obviously, let's chat about the important part this weekend, which is the championship. So Lando Norris, for the first time this year, we can have a championship winner this weekend, as I said at the top, and it is Lando Norris. Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen cannot win this weekend. They are too far ahead. Yeah, they're way too far behind. Lando is 24 points ahead of both of them after McLaren were double DSQ'd from Vegas, Tyre. Um, but there's a couple of connotations of how Lando can win it this weekend. Essentially, there's lots of different ways that could happen. It could finish fifth and they can all be knocked out. There's a million different potential ways that it can happen. But what it boils down to is two things. One, if he leaves Qatar 26 points ahead of them, he wins. Simple as that. If on Sunday at the checkered flag, the points all shake out after the sprint in the Grand Prix and Lando is 26 points ahead, he wins the championship there and then, whatever positions they finish in. If he gains 2 points on them net over the weekend, he wins. The other aspect of it is if he scores at least 1 point in the sprint, or if he scores 1 point in the sprint and then wins the Grand Prix, effectively they will all three go out of Qatar. Lando will go out of Qatar 25 points ahead of Max, at least 25 points ahead of Max, one of Max or Oscar. That sounds like not enough because obviously there's 25 on offer in Abu Dhabi, but he will have won his eighth race. And on countback, that means he wins because even if Oscar were to match him in Abu Dhabi, Lando would have won the eighth race first. And if we went even further back than that, Lando has 8 second places to Oscar's 3. So there's a couple of ways Lando could do it. The easiest thing in the world to do is just be faster than both of them. And Coops, the big thing on form at the moment is that Lando's in good form. Yes, okay. We're all a bit hung up on the fact that, he didn't score a single point in Vegas. That wasn't his fault. That was 100% the team's fault, even if they did tell him to slam the brakes on for the last few laps. If they'd told him that a bit sooner, he could have coughed up third and fourth and still taken a huge chunk in the championship. So that's on the team. But other than a slight mistake at the start, which you touched on last week, Lando had a pretty peerless weekend in Vegas. And in the previous race before that, at the sprint in Brazil, he took home maximum points. He won the sprint and he won the race. So form for the weekend, could you say it's still Lando Norris, or has Max Verstappen taken over as the form driver at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's still Lando. If you look at it from after Canada, after he had the mistake in Canada, he's been pretty consistent. But as you've seen throughout the season, we just can't write off Max. I think the person who's coming into it with the most pressure is Piastri because he's just not hooking it up. Max just doesn't seem to be that bothered about any kind of pressure. But I mean, we'll see this weekend because this is the first time for a long time now and we're at the business end where Max is now back in it. Because right up until now, Max is like, no, they're too good. We're not going
And
to.
even standing on the top of the podium in Vegas, he was still like, that wasn't enough. Lando's right beside me. It wasn't enough. It took 5 hours for him to think, oh, hello, that was enough.
No, so maybe the pressure it might be slightly different. Maybe the decisions will be slightly different in the race by both drivers. But yeah, I think it has to be. I think Lando probably in my head, it's probably Lando that is just a wee bit above it in form from Max, but not by much. You're talking almost level, but I think it's Lando that pips it for me, and that's more consistency because of where he's been. And where he's just quietly got on it. He's done a lot of things. Max is doing it because it's Max. He's not changed anything. It's just Max. But Lando's went, right, this isn't working. He's changed the people behind him. He's changed whatever he's changed. The minor kind of updates in the car have suited him slightly better. and he's just like he's got himself in that zone. Even with the conversations in the media, there's a lot less carrying on, a lot less kind of. It's very business-like and very much like this is I need to get down and this is what we're doing. The answers are very business, almost borderline cliche because you can pretty much write them before he reads the way he says them. So I've got to go with Lando in terms of form.
Sock, what about yourself? Where do you land on this? Last week you were surprisingly complimentary of Lando. Do you think the DSQ and the fact that all of a sudden Max is in his rearview mirror will have affected him? Is this a challenge on his psyche in terms of his his mental strength that he's shown in the past few races? Or
Yeah. I think it is certainly a challenge on him. I don't know if it's the greatest challenge. He's still in quite a commanding position. You know what I mean? It's not like it's below 10 points. It's 24
hmm,
points. I know it's a sprint weekend. I know there's a lot of points up for grabs over the weekend. But as I kind of said, where I'm most interested is to see the performance of the McLaren and what kind of pressure that could potentially lead to. Does do McLaren have to go with a higher ride height? Do they do it just out of safety? Does that significantly impact the pace of that car, especially
hmm.
over racing laps? I That's where I kind of see the kind of the pressure creep in, and can Lando then pull out a solid drive and not panic and not do something silly. So I don't know. It's definitely up in the air for me. I think mentality wise, I would like to say at this stage that Lando has kind of come out of his demons, especially after that DNF in the Netherlands. I think that he has shown a lot of mental strength and fortitude, and I know he's been working with a coach on that over the last couple of months. So, look, for his sake, I'd like to see him be able to pull through on it, but I don't know. I don't know if that will be enough, even if he has the mentality. What does this really mean now for the McLaren if they do have to change the ride height?
It's a good question. It's something that hasn't necessarily affected them too much throughout the season, but again, after that Brazil directive changed how not just McLaren, how a lot of teams tweak their height and manage
Mm-hmm.
their skid block, however the technical rule worked for that. We don't know how much that was preventing them from running out their skids at other races. I do think, like I said, this will be a higher ride track anyway, because if nothing else, it's a super high downforce track. So the wings will be at full attack mode. And if the wings are at full attack, you cannot then have the car at full depression because it'll porpoise like crazy because it'll be pushed too far into the road and they'll just lose all the downforce. So there does have to be an element of it, but to your point, how is that going to then affect their pace, their handling? If it unlocks an element of
Unsteadiness in
front
the car.
that might favor Piastri all of a sudden. Maybe this is the
Yeah.
change that's favored Lando more than Oscar. We genuinely don't know. It's all speculation, but there is potentially that element as well. If we see Oscar come along and dominate this by 30 seconds, we could probably say, interesting.
Tyre
Maybe it was
is more
something.
of an Oscar track. It is much more kind of smoother movements rather than the point the nose and go that
For sure,
Lando
it's
likes.
if Lando was comfortably quicker in Monaco, where you're on the absolute ragged edge for two
Yeah.
kilometers. Qatar is not like that as well. It's very quick, and it's not the ragged edge though. Like for example, I think Jenson Button would have been very dominant at a track like Qatar
Mm.
because he was very good at a track like Suzuka, where it's multiple and in fact with Silverstone you never really did too well at, but Suzuka, for example, he was excellent at. I think someone like a Jenson Button would have been very good here. Let's get into our predictions for the Qatar Grand Prix. And actually, lads, while you're just thinking about that, I'll give the schedule for the weekend. Obviously, it is a sprint weekend this weekend. And for those of us on this side of the pond, UK Ireland times, you good news, you don't have to wake up at 4 in the morning this time. So practice one will be on Friday at at 1:30 in the afternoon. Practice two, sprint qualifying will be on Friday at 5:30. The sprint itself will be on Saturday, the 29th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Qualifying for the main race will be on Saturday at 6 p.m. And then the race will be on Sunday at 4 p.m. So relatively normal times this weekend, thankfully for the rest of us. And Abu Dhabi the following week should be about the same. Abu Dhabi normally starts about 3 or 4. It's the kind of twilight race. So that's nice. Sorry, Larry, over in the US and any American fans, but you had your fun. Back to us now. Right, let's get into it. And I need a couple of predictions from you this time around, lads. So we do the race first, and then we get on to the championship. So I want your sprint winner, pole, top three, and a wild shout, please. Coops, I'll start with you.
The sprint one will be Lando Norris.
Okay.
Pole position will be Max Verstappen. And the top three will be... Right, okay, screw it. Lando, Max, George Russell.
Okay, and your wild shout?
Something will happen in the sprint which will more or less guarantee that Lando's going to win it. And I will also say that Lando will clinch it at Qatar. There we go.
Okay, so Lando wins in Qatar. Sock, your sprint win, please.
Max.
Pole position.
Max.
Top three. You can't say Max three times.
So third, I'm caught between my second and third where they're going to finish. Third, George. Second, Charles. Max winner.
Okay, so no need to ask what your wild shout is then.
Yeah, I think the McLarens could be in for a rough weekend. I think Lando places in the top three in the sprint, but I don't think they're anywhere near the podium.
You think they're DNFing, or they're obviously just both not on the podium?
I think there's a chance of a DNF, but no, I think the podium, I think it's going to be a good weekend for the Mercedes. I think the Mercedes could both be ahead of the McLarens.
Interesting. And based on all those predictions, I'm assuming you're thinking it's going to Abu Dhabi.
It's going to Abu Dhabi.
All right then. For my part, then I'm fully drinking the orange Kool-Aid here. I'm going to say Lando wins the sprint. Lando's on pole. Top three is Lando, Max, and Charles. I know that's maybe an odd call. I don't know what to make of the Mercedes here. It's also maybe a weird call to say Charles because this is going to be a high rake track and they've not done well at that this year. But I'm feeling the vibes. It's a flat out track. Charles Leclerc is the fastest qualifier in Formula One, no matter what the situation is, and he gets to do 57 laps at full speed because weird directives. And I think Lando will
There's
wrap
going
it
to be
up.
a Lyco there for him at some point for one reason or another. Let's be real. It's Ferrari.
We'll have some new words of wisdom for him.
He has finished well pretty much in every race here, even though it's not technically a Ferrari track.
No, it's not, but it's a Charles Leclerc track. And to your point earlier on, it requires that smoothness, which he can be aggressive, but he can be as smooth as Alan Prost when he needs to be. I think Lando is going to win it in Qatar. I can just say it's a sprint weekend. The last several sprint weekends, he has been very, very good, apart from the fact that, his teammate took him out in Texas. But he'd have gone on and finished second there pretty comfortably if that had not happened. So there we go. Let us know what you think for this weekend. It's the big one. Well, it's the first big one, potentially the only big one, depending on what happens. Is Lando Norris going to win the championship in Qatar, the first time that can happen this whole year? Or is Max Verstappen going to spring a surprise? Or is Oscar Piastri going to finally spring a surprise and we get it to run to Abu Dhabi? We should say, with all that in mind, okay, fair enough. The double DSQ was unexpected, and we said something mad needs to swing for this championship. It is strongly unlikely that happens again. And as long as he doesn't DSQ, it is still Lando's to win, even if it does go to Abu Dhabi. I think if it goes to Abu Dhabi, that makes it considerably harder. And you just think Max Verstappen is rewatching the 2010 season again and again and again. One final fact on that, the reason I bring that up is F1 put up, or Sky Sports put up a thing earlier on the last time a fight went to, a couple of times the fight went to the final race, and they highlighted 2010 and 2007, how far the drivers who eventually won were with two races to go. Kimi Raikkonen, adjusted to the current point system, would have been the equivalent of 37 points behind the McLarens going into the second last race of the season. He obviously won that season by 1 point. Sebastian Vettel was 1 point further back than Max Verstappen is now. He was 25 points behind in the set going into the second last race of the season, and he won the race by crossing the line first in Abu Dhabi. He had not led a single lap he had not been ahead at any point in that championship until he won it. So it is not over yet, but it could be on Sunday night. Any final thoughts then from your end, Coops?
No, I'm just looking forward to the sprint to see if one of my predictions go right. They won't, but fun to try.
Sock, anything else from your end then before we finish up?
A dramatic tire explosion. Don't know who, don't know where, but a dramatic tire explosion, and it'll be under the 25 lap limit.
That'll be a
Probably in
bit of
the
a
sprint.
that'll be a bit of a slap in Pirelli's face, wouldn't it? There we go. Let us know your predictions for the Qatar Grand Prix below wherever you're watching. Find us on all socials and let us know your predictions for the Qatar Grand Prix. I hope you enjoyed this weekend. It should be a good one. And even if the race isn't necessarily the most interesting, there is going to be a lot to talk about in it. But I do think there's going to be an interesting race ahead of us this weekend. Enjoy it wherever you're watching. We'll be back to review it early next week. Subscribe wherever you're listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.
Bye.